I'm leaving for good at the end of the semester.
Please tell me that you're kidding. This isn't funny.
Why would I be kidding you?
Okay guys, I'm Max and I am about to review
Cherry!
It stars Tom Holland and it's been directed and made by the Russo brothers. First thing you need to know, there is no tight lycra and there is nobody that needs rescuing. Actually, that's not true. There is, but it's actually Tom Holland's character, Cherry. Take a look at the movie and when you come back, I'll tell you some more about what I thought of it.
Sometimes I feel like I've already seen everything that's gonna happen. And it's a nightmare. My one true accomplishment was not dying. I have this noise in my head.
It'll stop. One day it'll go quiet.
It's on Apple TV and it's probably the most demanding role that Tom Holland has ever taken on. In fact, Tom himself has said that he didn't want to do this role and he'll never ever do a role like this again. Jeez. Okay, settle down. You might change your mind. The Russo brothers convinced him to take on this role and the character he plays, Cherry, goes through so much trials and tribulations. There's not much good points that he goes through, like there's not like that many highs. He falls in love, gets his heart broken, he joins the army, goes through trauma, PTSD when he comes back, addiction, becomes a criminal. It's really interesting because obviously he's done different movies, but he's really known now as Peter Parker from the Spider-Man movies. So this really was kind of a make or break moment for him. And I think the only reason he said yes to doing it was because it was with the Russo brothers and that he trusts them. He knows if he's going to feel uncomfortable, it's better to feel uncomfortable with people that make you feel comfortable, if that makes any sense. And I think the Russo brothers see something in Tom where they actually think, a lot of times people that do Marvel and DC type of films, they get typecast and they get critiqued always. Tom is 24 now, so he's still young enough to kind of show diverse and different sides to who he could be as an actor. And I think by pushing him to do this, it's also kind of like really cool and really lovely on their part because they want to help him become more than he is. And very few people invest in actors or talent like that, so I think there's a deep connection there where they really want to help him. Because I do truly believe Tom would never have auditioned for a role like this because he would have thought, hell no, come on, people don't want this from me, people are going to criticise me, people are going to say you've never lived this life, you can't portray this character. And yeah, that does cross your mind. You do think, oh my god, there's the obvious angst characters, you know, in Hollywood that could have been chosen for this role over Tom. And maybe they would have been more believable. Even new talent, because it's a role that I think you can't have... On paper, it feels like you couldn't have picked somebody that was really popular or known for something to play this role because it's such a tough journey that this character goes on that you actually want to totally invest in the character and not be thinking about that person who's playing him as somebody else that they're known for. But this is the interesting thing. After the first bit where he starts at 17 and I think he goes all the way up to 25 playing this character, so you see different changes in his appearance and life experiences and what he goes through. But I think that initial 17 when he falls in love and he's got his beanie hat on and glasses and he's walking, I did think Peter Parker. But then as soon as he went to the army and he came back, I can honestly tell you I stopped thinking of Spider-Man and I saw Tom as Cherry.
Hey.
Hey. Hey, I'm really happy you're here.
Why is that?
Because I like you. A lot. You wanna go for a walk? We meet Cherry and he's a kid who's having a hard time, just doesn't really know why he feels the way he feels. And he meets this wonderful lady called Emily.
Cherry is the first time Emily has ever experienced love.
It's just pheromones playing tricks on people.
I love you.
She's finally escaped an abusive home. It forces her to face her demons in a way that causes her to self-destruct.
In the long run, I think this is probably the best decision he could have made, whether he thinks it or not, because the critics have been pretty hard on him. And I think Daisy Ridley, who's starring in Chaos Walking with him, who's also a big star from Star Wars, she said something really interesting recently, which I think makes perfect sense on why Tom is being critiqued so harshly, I think, by some critics. Take a look at what Daisy had to say.
Tom has like a way different time than me. I was like part of a group of wonderful people, and I always felt part of a group. And, you know, Star Wars is its own thing. Like, it has a life of its own. And I was always with John and Oscar and Adam. Like, it was always like a group thing. I think, like, Tom plays Spider-Man in Spider-Man. Like, it's mega. It's not to, like, I know I had like a mega opportunity and it's amazing, but in terms of that, like, it's so different. Like, he is literally the face of Spider-Man, which I'm like, that is intense.
It's like Tom is this larger than life character as Spider-Man, and everybody thinks of him as the clean-cut Peter Parker, and so many eyes are on him, and he's such a money machine as well, I guess, for Spider-Man, for Marvel, for everything he does now. So when you take on a role that's like this, that's completely opposite to the character people love you for, it truly is going to polarize, and I think that's natural. I don't think everybody was ever going to be fair to him, regardless of his performance. I think as soon as you see the synopsis and you see his name attached to it and the Russo brothers, judgment was always going to be made. Whether that's fair or not, that's just the way the world is. They decide that they're going to judge you just because of what you've done. But I honestly can tell you that I think that people are being incredibly harsh on him, and I think he did a good job. It wasn't perfect, but I think he did enough to convince me that he was trying to share different sides of what one man can go through. And PTSD in itself is such a tough subject to talk about amongst our friends and people, and for them to make a film like this and know that he's got this whole young audience that love him, and people are going to come and watch it because it's Tom Holland, that normally probably wouldn't have watched a film like Cherry. So there's that win side of it as well, highlighting subject matters that perhaps people normally wouldn't watch, that will watch because of him. Side note, Russo brothers, can we just take a minute to talk about them as well? These guys have been in the game since, I think, 1997, and I think Pieces was their first film. Similarities with this one, absolutely. You've got to remember they were indie directors, indie creators at one point, and they've gone on a journey. It's 2021. They've evolved. They've made different types of things. They've done TV shows like Community. They've done films like Me, You and Dupree. Last year, I didn't know, but till recently, one of the guys from the Russo brothers produced Relic, and Relic was like one of the standout independent sort of horrors that I supported last year. And I remember talking to Natalie in Australia and her sharing how excited she was that this film has gone international. And I think the force of the Russo brothers, they're able to put money, invest, and get studios behind some of these smaller films. So the fact that they want to do it is great, but they came from that. So for people to say, stay in your lane, you're Marvel now, you're big studio films, I think it's a bit crap, and I think it's ridiculous also, because you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to do both. Daniel Kaluuya, who's been doing the rounds for Judas and the Black Messiah, side note, awesome film. He did an interview recently with Tamron Hall, who's lovely, and she asked him about how he envisioned his journey was going to go, and he spoke about, you know, this thing about wanting to work in the indie scene and in kind of mainstream cinema. Have a look.
It's something that I realised, because I'm not really from this industry. Like, I wasn't really exposed to stuff like that. I've learned like on the job, and so I was watching a lot of excellent things, and I was like, oh, and I showed it to my friends that I grew up with, and they didn't really understand it, you know, or my family in Uganda, they didn't really understand it. So I realised, oh, this is inaccessible. It's excellent, but it's inaccessible. There's certain things you have to know in order to access this story. And then I was doing projects, and the things what I was loving about them is that people from all walks of life were coming to watch it. You didn't have to like understand the industry or watch this Danish film in 1974 to kind of understand it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but you can still have that a part of it. You can still have a high level of craft. But I want to reach an audience. I want to reach people that are not necessarily cinephiles, but still want to please cinephiles at the same time. I think I was looking at it as like, oh, it's like either like you're doing the franchises or you're doing the art house. And I'm like, well, I want to do both. Why
can't you do a Get Out, a Queen and Slim, and then do a Black Panther and a Widows? Why can't you do that? I'm a bit like Daniel in the sense that as just as a person, and then as a journalist, as a presenter, as a producer. I love indie films and I love mainstream cinema, and I like both. And why can't I enjoy both? Because something is popular, I'm not supposed to like it. Because I supported His House, which is an independent standout film from last year, I now shouldn't give a damn about a Marvel film? Well, that's not how it works. WandaVision, I loved that series. And I also loved Rocks. I just feel like this putting people in boxes has got to stop. And Cherry is a great example of when huge names come together and highlight subject matters that normally get handled by smaller independent films that don't get seen by everyone. That when they're doing that, they're still critiqued, so they can't win.
But when they come back together, they don't come back together for the right reasons.
When he comes back from Iraq, Tom and I completely destroy our characters' lives.
Get on the ground! He doesn't really know what to do without her, and he doesn't really know how to live life with her.
We don't shy away from the negative aspects of this type of love.
The film isn't perfect, but a film doesn't have to be perfect to be enjoyable, or to be thought-provoking, or to just provoke some sort of emotion, guys. I think it was about 2.5 hours. It was very long, but I was gripped and it kept me right to the end. So congratulations to Tom Holland. Also, I have to shout out Ciara Bravo, his co-star. She was just like, every time she was on screen, I was just glued to her. And she had a supporting role, and it's really interesting because I think Tom taking on a role like this and having somebody like Ciara as his co-star, the chemistry between them, you could tell that was crucial to making this work, because they shared so much on-screen time together, and yeah, it was just beautiful to watch. I loved her. I think she hopefully is somebody to keep an eye on. I'm looking forward to seeing what else she comes with. You've got to think, if you're Ciara Bravo and you go for this audition and then you get it, you're going on set with Russo brothers and Tom Holland, who are all connected and quite pally-pally. That's intimidating already, but she went, she did her thing, she owned her role, and she absolutely was one of the best things in the film. So yeah, I loved her in the film. Guys, check it out. It's called Cherry. It's on Apple TV. My full review, if you want to read it like a full written review, I try and do that too sometimes. Head over to clippyweek.net. It's also in the show notes below.
You're gonna make it through this.
I love you.
Can you look back to when you met the one you loved the most? And remember exactly how it was? What you saw in her that made you say, yes, this is what I came here for. Sometimes I feel like I've already seen everything that's gonna happen. And it's a nightmare.